How you doing, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We're going to have a couple of guests. We're going to have Roland Alexander up. We're going to talk for just a few minutes. We're going to talk probably about 15 after to talk about the Noah tryouts, which were held at his gym in Hayward. And 3 wrestlers, in fact, from 3 different tryouts, all got picked and will be starting with Noah on the 9th in their junior heavyweight tournament. It's a 2-week-long tournament where most of the junior heavyweights of Pro Wrestling Noah, led by Naomichi Marufuji, who should be the star of that division and hopefully will be, but Kentaro Shiga and Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, all those guys. Anyway, 3 Americans are being brought in. Jardy France from All Pro Wrestling, Matt Murphy from World League Wrestling, and which is Harley Race's group in Missouri, and B.J. Whitmer from Les Thatcher's Heartland Wrestling were the 3 guys picked. And anyway, Mike Modest, Christopher Daniels, Donovan Morgan, and Tony Jones, guys who have been on our show, we're all at the tryout, and we'll talk about how that tryout went, which was just the other day. And also, Dave Republic of Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling will be our guest at about 45 after the hour. So anyway, that's the scoop on today's show. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing good. That's good.
Not a whole heck of a lot of news, actually, now I notice this. We have, actually, that's probably the biggest.
That is the news for today, folks.
That's the news. That and a bunch of ESPN polls. Let's see. Vince McMahon won the poll of which sports executive would you most like to keep quiet, beating Jerry Jones, so pretty handily. And there was another ESPN poll which says which of these leagues do you follow in the spring? And they had WWF and WCW wrestling as one group, which I guess they technically are, although I don't even think WCW exists this spring. But anyway, it placed in 4th place behind Major League Baseball, NBA playoffs, and NHL playoffs, which is about as high as it's going to do because you're talking about, ESPN websites, pure sports. So it beat Major League Soccer. It's an interesting thing. First of all, and I guess the whole argument, we got some people, in the Vince McMahon thing say, Vince McMahon is not a sports executive. And technically, I mean, he did the XFL. So until they folded the XFL a couple of weeks ago, he was a sports executive. And now it's more of a question. He's a sports entertainment executive for sure. So whether that's sport is, I guess it's your definition of sport. I mean, what wrestling fits into, I don't know, Brian, do you consider, but athletes and sports are 2 totally different things also. I mean, because I don't think there's any question.
Wrestlers are athletes.
Wrestlers are athletes. I don't think there's any question of that.
Most wrestlers. I can't even say all wrestlers.
I won't say all wrestlers. No. It's like, but your top wrestlers are athletes. Everybody that works for the WWF is an athlete in some form. I mean, even Godfather or Goodfather, he's an athlete. So
he is an athlete. Sometimes he may not look like it, but he is.
Yeah. Now, not all wrestlers are athletes. I don't know. I just was watching some Japanese tapes last night, and I saw Abdullah the Butcher, and Kamala, too.
I really have a hard time. I don't even know whether I would consider it a sport or not. I mean, I look at things like
aspects of it are
being considered a sport, and bowling, stuff like that. And I understand that, okay,
synchronized swimming.
Anybody can bowl, because I go to the bowling alley and I see 2-year-olds throwing a little ball down the lane right there. And they're bowling. They're horrible, of course. But, they're out there rolling the balls. So anybody can be a bowler. It doesn't take an athlete. But at the same time, to be a good bowler, it takes a certain amount of skill. And to be a wrestler, it also takes a certain amount of skill. So
it takes more athletic ability, I believe, to be a top wrestler than a top bowler.
Oh, definitely.
There's a certain skill level that's inherent in both. And in both, of course, the one thing with bowling that's not in wrestling is that bowling you're in real competition to win, and in wrestling you're in competition to entertain the audience, but it's a lot more subjective. Bowling, it's how many pins you knock down. I'm sure there's politics in bowling too that I'm not aware of because I'm not a bowling aficionado, but ultimately, like, the guy who wins the tournament's the guy who, gets the most pins down. In wrestling, we can sort of argue that the guy who's on top is the guy who sells the most tickets, but nobody really knows that. You know what I mean? It's like, there's so much politics involved. Boy, speaking of politics involved, I had some interesting discussions today about the politics of the World Wrestling Federation, but that's another story. Anyway, let's see.
Just out of curiosity, did you hear the end of Eddie's show?
Yeah, I was listening to the end of Eddie's show. You know what I want to say about the end of Eddie's show? Okay, because I wrote the thing about, in this week's Observer, I wrote about, purists that don't really understand pride. Okay, it's like, if you consider pride a pure sport, okay? Pure sport. Without question. First of all, fixing matches is one thing, okay? But on that Pride show, as best as I can tell, there were no fixed matches. But the show was carried by two professional wrestlers, Takayama and Fujita, that did, as best I can tell, a real match. So I don't think that's an issue. And and I heard the whole build-up going into the show of this Pride show of oh my God, they're putting Fujita and Takayama in the main event. But the bottom line is they sold the building out with Fujita and Takayama. If you watch the show and look in the newspapers the next day, the rest of those matches are afterthoughts to the general public in Japan. Fujita and Takayama was front page, full color of the sports section, which professional wrestling rarely gets. Mixed martial arts virtually never gets, unless it's, I'm sure Sakuraba and the Gracies got it. But the whole thing is that is what carried the show. Now, if you're a purist...
And it was real.
What?
And it was real.
And as best I can tell, I don't know for sure, but it looked real as hell to me. A week from now, I'll have a pretty strong opinion when I see the Fujita-Nagata match. Because if Fujita and Nagata look just as real, then I got to question it. But it looked pretty damn real to me. And you know what? I've seen
but Nagata's a hell of a lot better than Takayama.
Yeah, but I did see... Well, I saw Takayama with Misawa, and they had a hell of a match. And you saw that match too, Brian. However, it did not look real.
But that was totally different style. That was pro wrestling style.
Right. No, this looked real, and it was a hell of a fight, too. Because the whole deal is both guys really had no punch defense. So, they were hitting each other really hard. They weren't great fighters. They weren't... I've seen a lot worse guys in mixed martial arts than certainly Takayama. Obviously Fujita's a very lucky man, but, Fujita's a hell of a wrestler, and he has trained hard, and he's a great athlete. He just doesn't have punch defense, and he's been the luckiest martial arts fighter in the history of the world, with an undefeated record. For an undefeated record and the wins he has, he's not that great, but what the hell. But the thing is that it was not a fixed fight. And I look at boxing, okay? This boxing match this weekend with, they are far more qualified to be fighting, both of those guys, than certainly Joe Frazier's daughter, who's a 39-year-old attorney who's just taken up boxing, and perhaps Muhammad Ali's daughter. And then that is the biggest fight, publicity-wise, in women's boxing history is this fight this weekend, even though, obviously there are many, many, many women fighters who are bigger. They're headlining. This is the first time there's ever been that I'm aware of, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong on this one, but the first time that I am aware of a women's fight headlining a men's pay-per-view in boxing. And it's not because these are the two best women boxers in their weight class. It's because, one of them happens to be Joe Frazier's daughter. It's the name, and it's the same thing, and that's in boxing. It's if they were to do a fake match, yes, that would be really bad. But what I was saying is that if you understand the business of mixed martial arts, Fujita and Takayama were the guys who sold the tickets that made the ability to see the rest of these matches in a high-profile event possible. I'm not in favor of doing fixed matches on those shows as a sports fan. And I understand the fixed match. The fixed match is a totally different argument, okay? Because I was writing about a real match that happened to be between two pro wrestlers that sold out a building and had a hell of a match doing so. But it was two pro wrestlers. If it was, they have done work matches with Takada in the past, and that's a different issue. But you know what? Here's the thing. It's not right. I can understand being upset a lot more about the fixed matches than about this one. But if it was not for Nobuhiko Takada, this group would not exist. It's the highest profile mixed martial arts group in the world, and it exists largely due to professional wrestling fans and due to professional wrestling because the big draws are, besides the Gracies, have been that, as far as the big gates have been Takada, Ogawa, Sakuraba, all pro wrestlers. And, I
don't understand how anybody can have a gripe about Fujita and Takayama at all.
I'll tell you what. Because the bottom line is it could have been a worked match based on the history of the company that has done. But it wasn't. That's right.
Anything could be worked.
That's true, because there have been worked boxing matches. That's true.
Yeah.
I understand, he was getting mad because I wrote the word purists. But that's what I mean. It's it's business. It's not a corrupt match if they go at it for real. If it was a worked match, then a worked match perverts sport. I won't argue that. That's a valid point. And then you have the thing of, okay, what do you do? Is it worth losing? I don't know, But it is still perverted. It still perverts sport. I mean, like, then the next step is fixing other sporting events. But again, the Japanese culture is different than our culture as far as works and shoots. I mean, because pro wrestling's always had, like we've talked about before, it's always had some form of shoots in their pro wrestling. So it's always been this mixed, blurry line. And their so-called shoot sports have always had works. And that's, so it's just, I don't know. They don't have athletic commissions there. Maybe they should. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. This is the Wrestling Observer Live drinking game. So anyway, this was someone sent on the comment board. Let's see. If you don't know what a drinking game is, it's basically a game where theoretically you take a drink of beer. We're going to have a lot of drunk listeners. And if you're under the age of 21... Yeah, I know. Do not play this game at home unless you're over the age of 21. And do not play this game if you are planning on driving or operating heavy machinery or doing anything athletic. Anyway, you take a drink of beer whenever somebody on the show does something typical. And that's like every minute of the show. You chug hard when someone does something out of character. So anyway, here's the deal. Here are the rules. If Brian is mean to a caller, take one drink. Brian's only mean to callers.
Why am I getting that reputation?
I guess because you were mean to a caller the other day. If Dave is mean to a caller and apologizes or say something like, I feel bad about doing that, take 2 drinks. I only did that once just the other day because the guy had a booking idea. I just thought the idea wasn't good. Dave totally rips apart a caller, chug. Yeah, James from Kentucky calls, take 1 drink. He ain't going to be calling unless he has some good questions. By the way, if he has emails and has really good questions, we will certainly answer them. But, you're not. Anyway, Al speaks, take 1 drink. Well, that's going to happen soon. The show ends without Al saying anything, chug. The show comes back from a break with a recording of a wrestler doing a promo, take 1 drink. Well, hopefully we'll have more of those. The show comes back from the break with a song, take 1 drink. You're going to be drinking a lot of breaks. The song is Bark at the Moon, take another drink. The song is I Want to Be a Hulkamaniac, chug. Somebody swears, take 2 drinks. Dave swears, take 3 drinks. Either Dave or Brian have mic problems, take 3 drinks. Speaking of that, how about if we have website problems?
That's right.
We have not been able to update, and the website, I don't know.
We have. I updated this afternoon.
Really? I could not update. I couldn't access the site, and I got several emails who couldn't. But I just tried to update right before the show. Well, that's our mic problem right there. Okay, what?
Okay.
What, Brian?
Nothing.
I didn't hear what you said. Or did you do that on purpose?
Keep reading and you'll get it.
Okay. The caller's cell phone dies, take 2 drinks. Brian makes a joke, and Dave doesn't pay attention to it or goes, huh, and continues what he's saying, take 1 drink. Oh, there you go.
Everybody better be drinking right now.
That's right. That's a good one. Dave chuckles, take 1 drink. Dave does his laugh, take 2 drinks. A caller asks what happened to Shawn Michaels. That should be take 5 drinks, buddy. Someone under contract is the WF guest. Under contract to the WF is a guest. Chug. Hey, we have guys, just not active wrestlers. Anyway, that's the scoop on the drinking game. Does that mean we're going to emails right now? Let me just check this. Matt Ratz will be webcasting 3 taped matches Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. These are the matches that Eric Bischoff saw when he was up there about a month or 2 ago, which will include Ted Hart, the nephew of Bret and Owen Hart, and Harry the Bulldog Smith, who's Davey Boy and Diana's son. And what do we got here?
Hey, I got to make a comment, by the way. I started watching a Tough Enough tape that Damien Darkside sent me. I actually don't have his real name here in front of me, but I have to say 2 things. Number 1, I am now looking forward to the show more than ever, and it will be debuting soon, and I guarantee I'm watching every episode. And
really?
Number 2,
I'll watch the first one.
I only saw about 10 minutes of this tape, but I have some advice for young Mr. Darkside and anybody else who wants a job with the World Wrestling Federation someday, and that is, do not go to Titan Towers and cut a promo outside the building when they lock you out, and then call them repeatedly, demanding to be let in, because I can think a few things that will burn more bridges than doing that. It was hilarious to watch on tape.
That is funny, though.
As far as attempting to actually get a job doing it, please, I'm begging you, never do that.
Okay. Our poll was perverted today. I want to tell you something. If you want to pervert the poll, vote 2 or 3 times, because if you vote 400 times, it's like I'm looking at this going somebody's messed up the poll, and the answer that you want is the one that's messed up. But anyway, what I can say about the poll is that nobody voted for Austin Undertaker. As far as the other stuff, as far as where it was going to fit in, I don't know. All right, let's go to some emails.
Why do people pervert the poll?
It gives them something to do. So I can say, they pervert the poll.
They can't find something else to do when listening to the show than pervert the poll.
Well, now they're going to today for sure. After that, let's see. This is someone, David Duffett, who goes, I'm sorry to blow the whistle about Sarah Stalker, but it's going to turn out to be the big show. And that's just the beginning of the story. Well, that's the end of the story, buddy, because it ain't going to be the big show. Let's see.
I think there's certain people we shouldn't narrow down or we shouldn't eliminate yet.
Do you think he's one of them?
You never know.
No, you never know.
We can eliminate Paul Bearer, though, because he ain't having a match.
God, I hope we can eliminate the big show.
So do I, but you just never know.
Well, I mean, yeah, you do never know because it's probably not definite who it is. Although I know they have an idea. Brian knows that too. Anyway,
and I know there's problems with that idea, so
yes, that's right. There are problems with that idea, but there is an idea. Anyway, Roland, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing today, Dave?
Doing really, really good. We wanted you on the show for a couple minutes to talk about how everything went at your gym on Monday, and with Mitsuharu Misawa and Jardy France going over there. And I guess my first question is that I've seen most of your guys, and I've seen pretty much everybody except for Vic Capri. I think I've never actually seen him wrestle, but pretty much everybody else that was mentioned in the tryout. And Jardy France, did he do just like an unbelievable job, or are they just wanting to bring other guys in at other times? What's your thought about all of that?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what they were looking for their tournament. One thing I can tell you is that Jardy France is a very good wrestler. He's a very good mat wrestler. He's pretty innovative with his high flying. I don't think he's anywhere in the league of a Christopher Daniels or a Vic Capri. But in the same breath, I don't know exactly what they were looking for. I can tell you that, like, for example, after, we did the trial and everything, Christopher Daniels said that, he took me in the office and he talked and he said, like, if we ever did anything like this again, I know I'd have to change my match. And I know exactly where he's coming from because, Christopher sometimes happens to be more of a WWF product, and I don't think, I don't think Noah is anywhere near a WWF product. They're more physical, more sport and stuff like that. And I know exactly where Christopher was coming from because I think I screwed up a tryout in 1996 when Mike Modest tried out with Robert Thompson. I sat there and I helped those guys put together a match for the tryout, and I did it based on a 12, to 14-minute match and thinking that they're going to have time to build the psychology and this and that. And then, first of all, they cut it to 10, and then as they were going out the curtain, they cut it to 8, and I think they ended up doing 4, somewhere between 4 and 6 in the ring. And, there was no time to carry that out, and I was so naive to the product that I didn't know that they wanted boom, 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 instead of building to the match. And so, I think that might have a little bit to do with it. I don't know, maybe politics, I know that at one time the Japanese politics was, well, if you've wrestled for a smaller promotion, then, we're not going to touch you. I don't know if that's still the case in 2001 or not. So, I don't know, but all I know is I'm thrilled to death for Jardy. It all happened so quickly that even, I don't even think Noah had a chance to release the information. Somehow it kind of got leaked out like everything else does, and I guess there was 2 other guys besides Jardy going over there. So I think they'll be pleased with him.
Did they give you, when the thing was over, I know that, I don't know how much English Misawa spoke or anything or anyone there, but did they give you any indication of, we liked this or we didn't like this, or they just kind of watched and were quiet?
They were pretty much very businesslike, very quiet, and they said that they would, let us know what took place. I can tell you what I was impressed with, and based on what I was impressed with, I can almost guarantee you they probably were impressed equally. And because even though I haven't had an opportunity to watch much Noah as of late, I've watched a lot of Misawa, and I would imagine that there's a lot of Misawa in Noah, and so I can tell you that the 2 best matches that we put on were Tony Jones and Mark Smith and Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan, and it was unbelievable because I know they said something about disregard psychology, just go out there and wrestle, and Mike and Donovan only had 5 minutes to put together their match, and they didn't leave out any, and I was amazed at how much psychology you can do in a Japanese style match even when it's only 7 or 8 minutes. And because they just did a tremendous job. And so I would be very surprised if they're not impressed with those four. You know.
It's maybe. I mean, I don't know. You know, one of the things. I mean, I'm looking at this junior heavyweight division for them. They have a guy named Naomichi Marufuji who's really good and really charismatic. And I see this division kind of being like his thing. You know what I mean? And he's
right.
You know, he's small, so maybe the whole thing with Jardy is that you know, Jardy being a small guy.
And how small is he?
Marufuji?
Yeah.
195, I would guess.
Because see, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that, you know, like, and I don't know a whole lot about the Noah product. I need to educate myself in the next, couple of weeks. But they have small people to begin with, you know, and like just like APW, we have small people. Mike Modest is considered a heavyweight with us, you know. I don't know if that would be the case in Japan or.
Well, Mike wouldn't be a heavyweight there, just because, you know, I mean, the one thing they want with the foreigners. The foreign heavyweights are big guys.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Mike if Mike, you know, for Japan would probably be at 200 to 210. You know, I mean, he'd still be a junior heavyweight, and he's not too, you know. Actually, I think that Mike with Marufuji, to me, is a hell of a matchup because he's a solid worker, which is what Marufuji needs, and he's enough bigger that it's the right psychology for what they're looking for.
Right. Is it possible that they might even have more than two divisions? Like, in other words, maybe a junior heavyweight, which is, you know, the kind of Jardy size. I think Jardy goes at about 164, you know, up to whatever, and then you got maybe your cruisers, then maybe you got your heavyweights or your super heavyweights and your heavyweights.
I don't think that, but what I might be thinking, and I don't know where they're coming from, is that they may be bringing these three guys in to introduce in the division, and maybe you know, who knows, maybe they could go in there and like if they were impressed with, say, Modest or Donovan, that those are guys who they would save for title matches down the road that aren't getting beaten 3 times in this tournament, so to speak.
Because, I mean, you know, all they said was they were impressed with everybody. They said everybody was very, very impressive today. So, I mean, they were impressed with Daniels. They were impressed with, we did matches like Daniels wrestled Kevin Quinn. They had a very good match. Vic Capri wrestled Jardy France. They had a very good match. And then it was Tony Jones with Mark Smith. They had an outstanding match, you know, way above the standards I expected. And then Modest and Donovan probably had the best match. And then I believe Modest worked with Max Justice later on. And then Vinny Massaro worked with Jardy France later on. And those were good matches, you know, but I'm just based on me. I mean, that's just not my decision, but you know, I thought the 2 middle matches, you know, with Mark Smith, Tony Jones, and it was more in Don.
Well, Mark Smith and Tony Jones are too big for their junior heavyweight division for sure.
Yeah.
Way too big.
And I think, you know, what impressed me about those matches is to me it was more the Japanese style. There was a lot of amateur wrestling involved. There was a lot of wrestling involved. It was very physical. It was very stiff, and I just thought that they wrestled the matches that catered to the product a little bit more. But
you know, the one thing though, as far as like Mark Smith and Tony Jones, is that I think the fact that they can do that is obviously it speaks well for them.
Right.
But they also want Americans to be kind of bullies.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Not just a great, you know,
and they
not
were.
just a great.
For instance,
oh, okay, good.
Mark Smith, like I even told him afterwards, I says, I have no idea what you did or what made you do what you did, but I want you to go home and look at it about 150 times and don't forget it. You know, I mean, it was like the charisma that he had was unbelievable. The physicalness that he had was unbelievable. He did the amateur, he did the taunting. I mean, I was picturing actually those 2 matches like in Japan with the fans. You know how they, you know, the Japanese fans are very knowledgeable in how they react and everything. I was thinking, my God, those 2 matches would have gotten a lot of respect out of their fans and some great pops. And so Mark Smith showed me something, and even Tony showed me something he had never shown me before, you know, and I told both of them afterwards, it's so funny, but I think, I even told Mike and Donovan, these, and I swear to God, these were their best career matches that they ever had in their whole, like I think
really?
up to this point, I think Modest's best match might have been with Elix Skipper. This by far surpassed that. I mean, this was an all Japan Noah style match. You know, I think Donovan's best match prior to this might have been either with Christopher Daniels or with Michael Modest, and this one by far surpassed anything Donovan has ever done. And it wasn't even close with Mark Smith and Tony Jones. This was by far their best in-ring performance they've ever had.
Roland, anything else as far as your tournament in late October? Because we were talking about that one earlier today. How's everything? Who's in so far? And tell us how the plans are working out.
So far, we've probably got 10 of the 16 guys sort of locked up, and we've only revealed 2 of the names. One of them was Christopher Daniels, who was last year's winner of the tournament, and we're pretty pleased to have him back in this tournament because he's done real well in Super 8 and in last year's King of Indies. And then we've also named Scoot Andrews, well, not that we intended to right away, but it was kind of like it leaked. I guess Scoot might have told his website people, and next thing we knew, we were reading on your website. So we thought, well,
I think Reckless Youth might have leaked too.
Oh, really? Okay. So,
yeah.
Well, it did now.
We figured, we figured if they were on your website, then we might as well announce that they're out. But we want to kind of like have them trickle out a little bit. Like I can just tell you that some of the names that we've talked to, and I am pretty close to having commitments from them, and one of them is Doug Williams from England, and
really,
I've heard a lot of things about him, and he's just about a lock to be in the tournament. We've talked to Low Key. I got a chance to see Low Key on some footage and from Super 8. I just thought he was impressive, and I think that he's another guy that would do very well in Noah. Even with his lack of size, he is so serious when he comes to the ring. He's very athletic, very almost like it's a competition, like a real competition. And to me, that's when wrestling is wrestling. That's why I'm so happy about this Noah relationship, is because we all want to get hooked up with WWF and all that, but APW has never been that kind of a product. We've always actually, this is a dream come true for all of us, to try to build some kind of relationship with a Japanese promotion. So Low Key is somebody we're looking at. Naturally, we're looking at Reckless Youth. We don't really have a commitment on him yet, but kind of like a semi-commitment, and we're going to play some calls still, like AJ Styles is a guy I want to talk to, naturally, Vic Capri. I'm very impressed with Vic Capri. He's probably going to be extended an invitation to the tournament. So when it's all said and done, I'm sure there'll be some disappointed wrestlers, indie wrestlers, and even some APW wrestlers, but it's going to be that kind of a tournament where we're going to showcase. It's going to be a week of legends where we showcase future legends and honor legends from the past.
What about Ted Hart?
Well,
I know you're high on him.
Ted Hart, I'm very high on Ted Hart. Ted Hart stopped by our gym about a year and a half ago, and at that time, he might have been the most impressive indie wrestler I'd ever seen. And I remember Mike Modest having his mouth just open. He was like stunned, and it takes just as much to impress Mike Modest as it does me, because we're kind of from that same school, and Mike was the original guy we trained in APW, so like his thinking's a lot like my thinking and whatnot. And he was very impressed with Teddy Hart. Teddy, there's one of these guys that comes and goes sometimes. So we placed a call to Blake Norton to see if there was an interest, and we were told there was a lot of interest and on Teddy Hart's part. And so I was given a number to call him, and we called him, and he has yet to return the call. So I'm sure he's just.
So there's not enough interest yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, he'd be a great guy to get in the tournament. So, we're looking to have the 16 best in indie wrestling, and I'm just anxious to get to October, because I think that's going to be a fun week. And even besides the tournament, just the boot camp summit, where for 2 days, not only the 16 guys in the tournament, we're going to have special invitations to other top indie wrestlers to come out, exchange moves, counters, takedowns, high spots, finishes, and training methods in the ring, training methods in the weight room, eating habits. I just think it's a good thing for the industry, and it's a good thing to let these indie guys get together and do that. And I'm looking forward just to that, that portion of it. And as well as, like, during the day of the second day of the tournament, there's going to be some festivities of, like, there's going to be like an amateur wrestling clinic, and some of the names we're trying, like I'm trying to get Danny Hodge involved from Cauliflower Alley, maybe even a Dick Beyer, probably have Shooter Tony Jones involved with that, maybe Mark Smith because of his amateur background. So I'm looking forward to that whole week of festivities.
Cool. Roland, I want to thank you very much for joining us on such short notice and just tell us about everything that happened.
Always my pleasure. And, heck, maybe Chico Alvarez, maybe we'll even get him involved with King of Indies, and maybe he'll make his debut and you'll get to finally meet him, huh?
that's looking like it's a good possibility.
You never know.
Yeah.
As far as flying down, I hope that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch soon. And again, always a pleasure being on your show, Dave.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Roland. We're going to have Roland on the show for 90 minutes in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to get him on because so he can tell us about the NOAA tryout and the fact that the three guys, as we mentioned earlier, that are going for this tournament that starts this weekend, actually, a couple-week tournament, is Matt Murphy from World League Wrestling, which is Harley Race's group, B.J. Whitmer from Les Thatcher's group, Heartland Wrestling, and Jardy France from All Pro Wrestling. They're going to the NOAA Junior Heavyweight Tournament. Okay, let's get to a couple of emails before we get Dave Republic up. What would you say the chances are that Vince is, in fact, the stalker? Zero, just about none. I mean, if it is, it's like a last-ditch thing. Is Eddie Guerrero's angle with Lita and Matt Hardy entirely scrapped? Yeah, I guess they could go back to it in a couple of months, but, but they're going under the impression it's entirely scrapped, yes. What do you guys think was the worst business year ever for American wrestling? I would think probably in the 40s. Business was pretty weak for a lot of the 40s. I'm not enough of a historian, but I mean, as far as recently, 92 to 95 was a pretty weak period. What year do you think both WWF and WCW were losing tons of money and American wrestling was the most stale? As far as losing money, that 92... Money? What? Both losing tons of money, 92 to 95. They were both losing money. I mean, not like WCW lost last year. I mean, there was like, when we talk about tons of money, we're talking about, $4 million.
$6 million. Yeah.
Yeah, $6 million WCW to sports. I don't think WWF ever had a year where they lost. I think WWF may have gotten up to about $5-6 million in one of its bad years of losses. I'm not remembering exactly. Do you think wrestling's popularity could ever be as low as that of the early 90s? Oh, I think it could easily be that low or lower. Easily it could happen again, and it wouldn't surprise me that it does. In many ways, it's not as bad now when you look at the TV ratings. But if the WWF ratings, if they continue to go down, certainly. If you look at the
depends on what you mean by business. I mean, obviously WWF right now is still very successful, but you've also got two companies that just went out of business and nothing else.
Right, so you just have
How
one
much
company.
are indie groups making right now? Nothing.
And even then, when we talk about 92 to 95, you still had, you had Smoky Mountain, you had Memphis, ECW was just starting out. They just were starting to get a call, the following and everything. There were way more alternatives, back then. Although nobody was doing the business WWF is now doing. TV rating wise, WWF's ratings are higher now than they were in that period, because in that period I think they did mid-threes on Raw, on the good weeks. I think Raw ranged, a bad week of Raw was like about a 2.6, and a good week was about a 3.5, so that was kind of the range. So we're a little bit above that, but, at that period, and this is before Nitro even started, when I'm talking about this, during that period, WCW, they were on, the Saturday show, Sunday show, and those shows were doing numbers too, not big numbers, but they were doing like 2s. And during the good season, they were doing 3s, like the January, February, March, the high period before, the summer. They always went down in the summer and everything, summer and fall for England football. Let's see. Assuming Bill Goldberg has a 3-year, $6 million deal with AOL, those numbers, it's not quite 3 years. And it's maybe about $6 million left, though. It's about 27 months, I think. Could the WWF work out a deal where Goldberg accepts a 50% buyout from AOL and the WWF gives him a contract to make up the other 50%? See, the thing is no, that can't work. Okay, the whole deal is that Bill Goldberg has a contract, and either the WWF has to buy the contract from Time Warner, in which case, and if it's assignable, which I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Because I was told when Fusion was buying it, I was told that Goldberg's contract was assignable by Eric Bischoff. So I'm going under the assumption that it is. That may not be correct. Certainly when Fusion was going to buy it, Bill Goldberg was the main guy in their plans, so the contract had to be signable. Anyway, if they were to buy Bill Goldberg's contract from Time Warner, he would have to go, or he would be in breach of contract. So he would wrestle there. There's people going like, Bill doesn't want to wrestle though. You keep bringing up Bill, he doesn't want to wrestle. It's like, if he's going to have to wrestle to make $6 million in the next 3 years, we all know he's going to wrestle. Come on. He's going to, give up $6 million to not wrestle. But if they don't buy the contract, there's no incentive for him, to go wrestle for the WWF unless they buy the contract and he's assigned by Time Warner to WWF. So to do that, Time Warner's going to say, you buy the whole contract. That's the whole game.
Yeah, okay, to make it equal, what you're asking is for Goldberg to take $3 million and then an additional $3 from Vince to do wrestling when he could have gotten the $6 million to do nothing. So Vince would have to have him do the buyout for $3 million, then give him like an additional $6 million on top of that, or what's his incentive?
No, but there's no point in doing that either. Vince should just buy the contract because then he's going to spend the same. He's going to spend the same money either way, and Bill can say no. Bill can say no unless the contract itself is bought.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no. So let's see. As far as when the website will be back up, I don't know. I cannot believe I'm actually looking forward to a Spike Molly wedding on Raw or SmackDown. Oh, you just ruined my night. I hadn't played it that far. Also wanted to make mention, just got an email about the Randy Savage thing. Randy Savage talked about opening up his own promotion. If you read the story, okay, Randy Savage said that he's talking to investors, so that means he does not have investors. He has no television, okay? So, I mean, I'm not saying he won't do it, but I'm saying,
Don't jump the gun on this.
Don't, act like, oh, my God, Randy Savage is going to start this promotion with Bill Goldberg. You know what I mean? Which is kind of what some people are kind of, thinking from what they read. And it's like, if he doesn't have talking to investors is a long way, especially in this market, from having investors. Talking to TV, that means absolutely nothing right now. I mean, until you have investors in place with a lot of money, and you have American television on a real station, and Fox Sports Net isn't it, by the way, because they're going to preempt so much. You're not, you're just asking to lose money if you're going to be signing, buying $1 million contracts from Time Warner. I mean, you're going to have some major league TV. Nothing, pretty much, USA Network or, something along those lines to pull that one off. So anyway, that's the story there on that. What other stuff do we have here? Get to calls in just a second. A lot of calls. What? Dave proposed online. Okay, we'll get to him in just a second. I just want to mention we've had a lot of emails. It's very strange about turning Kurt Angle babyface. I guess just because everyone kind of sees perhaps Chris Jericho going heel. What are your thoughts on Angle as a babyface right now?
No.
Nope.
How's that for a Kurt answer?
I would say no also, for now. But at some point...
Angle just has one of those characters where it's going to absolutely water him down if you turn him babyface, because there's going to be a million things that he is right now that are so awesome that he's not going to be able to do. I mean, just look at that one promo where he was running down Hunter, and he was doing a total babyface promo, and then right out of nowhere he mentioned drinking milk, and everybody turned on him.
Yeah, but you can tweak that stuff if you give him the right thing. And I'll tell you, on Ohio Valley, and this is not necessarily a test, it just happens to work out in their storyline. He's going into Ohio Valley on the 27th as a babyface, and, he does babyface promos on their television. And I watched it, and it didn't hit me the way I hoped it would, if you know what I'm saying. It was like,
yeah.
It wasn't like, all right, that kind of babyface that you're really behind. It was just like, oh, Kurt's being a babyface, and that promo was... he's doing a babyface promo asking for revenge, but I don't feel it. So,
if you look back, remember before Kurt Angle even debuted, and you'd seen him work in Memphis, and the first thing that you said was Kurt Angle would be great if it were 1970. That's the kind of babyface he's going to be.
Awesome. But if he's a heel long enough and he's good enough, so you know how that cycle goes too. Because he is awesome, and sooner or later people are going to figure out, you know what, this guy's been awesome for 3 years. We really like him. He entertains us. And at that point, he's going to end up being a babyface. But they're not cheering him. You don't hear that thing like, remember before Austin or before Hunter? And Hunter hasn't even really turned yet. But where they come out and everybody really wants to cheer them? You don't hear that for Angle yet. So the fans are not demanding the turn.
It's happened before. Remember King of the Ring last year? King of the Ring last year was like a total babyface. When he beat Rikishi, everyone went insane.
Well, that was different.
True for people. Yeah,
that was different because look who he was in there with.
Ernest Miller, of all people, when Ernest Miller did his babyface turn, I guess it was that day that James Brown was on, I thought, how could this person be a babyface? There's so much to hate about his character. And it worked. Same with guys like Buff Bagwell. I think it could work, but I just wouldn't want to see it.
Yeah, Buff Bagwell and Rick Rude were two guys that I always thought just should not be babyface. Although Buff Bagwell...
And Brian Christopher.
Brian Christopher's another one, right? Now, I will say this, though. After the injury... When Buff Bagwell had the injury and he was making his comeback, he couldn't be anything but a babyface. And then they turned him, which I thought was, I thought they turned, they basically shit on $1 million Angle. Because, I mean, that guy, everybody saw him on television, what happened to him. Everybody knew it was real and knew he almost died. I mean, it was really bad, and he's making this comeback. And before he even did one babyface match, they'd already turned him heel and turned him back, that whole year. And, I mean, it was just like by the time when he came back, nobody cared. And it was like this would have been what would have made Buff Bagwell's career, and they totally screwed it up, which isn't the first time or the last time they did something like that. We got Dave Republic on the line. Dave, what's going on?
Hey, not much, Dave. And Brian, how you guys doing?
Hey.
We're doing really good.
Good.
Dave, you probably run, I don't know if this is correct, but based on results, I would think that you probably run as many shows, with the exception of the WWF, of maybe any promoter in the country or in North America right now. And if not, you're pretty darn close because you're running a lot of weeks, 3-4 shows.
Yeah, well, pretty much, whether it's true or not, and I try not to let fact get in the way of a good story. But, I mean, we run a lot of shows, and I would say you're right. We probably are the largest regional promotion in North America. We do about 120 to 150 shows a year, and next year we see that going up to almost 200 as we take on some new territories, including Idaho, Northern California, and Alaska, all the prime spots you can.
Northern California.
That's right.
That's a lot of travel.
Well, Alaska's awesome.
I think Alaska would be a great market because it's totally male dominated. I mean, and it's not like they have regular pro wrestling up there.
Well, that's where we found a lot of our success has been in isolated markets, or secondary markets, I call them, in northern British Columbia and those sort of places where there's really no influx of live entertainment. And then when you're talking about pro wrestling, of course, the WWF does not go to luxurious places like Smithers and 100 Mile House and all these other places.
And there's a reason.
Yeah, well, but of course, WCW tries to invade markets like Kelowna and Kamloops. But
there's a reason they were out of business, too.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But we do well in those type of markets, and we've been running fairly actively in Washington State for about the last year and have just been doing really, really well there. And we will continue to move into Oregon more actively and, again, Idaho.
Do you have any problems as far as Oregon, commission-wise, or is it not even a concern anymore?
Well, we have a fairly good relationship with the commission. We haven't really run a lot of shows in Oregon. We have decided to kind of really focus on Washington. We wrestle out of a place called Vancouver, Washington, which is basically 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe from Portland, Oregon. So we've decided to continue and establish our relationships in Washington and then do some more activity in Oregon. The commission the athletic department in Washington State from time to time can be as difficult as the Portland or the Oregon ones as well, but we try to keep a good relationship.
Now, as far as promoting independent shows, as someone who's done so many, what are the things, if people are talking about an independent promoter, what do you avoid the most? I mean, what are the things that are like the big no's of being an independent promoter?
Wow, Dave, if I knew all the answers, I'd probably be doing a lot better. Unfortunately, I think we still make some of the same mistakes. And probably the biggest mistakes we continue to make, which maybe we need to stop, and we're talking about ECCW, is in our quest to do a lot of shows, sometimes we don't give enough time to promote. Sometimes we think, well, geez, we're ECCW. Everyone knows who we are. And, of course, reality comes crashing down that, no, we don't have television. No, we don't have our own magazine. People don't know who we are, and we have to work that much harder to let them know who we are. So to give yourself enough time to promote a show, what does that mean? Could be 4 weeks, could be 2 months, who knows? But give yourself a lot of time to promote the show and use every means available to you, that being the internet, radio, television. Word of mouth is the best one, flyers, handbills, anything possible to get the word out that you're coming to town.
Now, you bring in some stars, like Chris Daniels works for you guys a lot, some other people like that really aren't, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, how do you feel as far as, like, if you're bringing in a Chris Daniels or a Tommy Dreamer or Steve Corino, do they sell extra tickets, or do you bring them in largely because they up the quality of the show, or kind of a combination of both? And, how much would a guy like Chris Daniels, who's really had no TV, mean, or a guy like Dreamer or Corino who've had TV, but it's ECW TV, or as compared to, and I don't know, you haven't really brought in any of the disenfranchised WCW guys. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but what are your thoughts as far as all those different things?
Well, I think what we try to do is a combination of a lot of different things. We obviously have our own homegrown talent like Dr. Luther, Gorgeous Michelle Starr, Juggernaut, Tornado Tony Kazina, etc. And when we bring guys in, it's for different reasons. When we bring in a guy like, say, a Honky Tonk Man, that's, to hopefully bring some more old school fans in that might recognize or remember him from the WWF days. When we bring a Christopher Daniels in, and he'll probably work for us about 40 times this year. We'll probably be literally his home promotion. We'll give him about 40 bookings this year. And when we bring a guy like him in, it's to really almost measure us against other promotions. When you hear about, and even I heard Roland Alexander on earlier on, you always hear Roland Alexander, Mike Modest, Christopher Daniels almost in the same breath when you talk about stars in the indies. So to bring a guy like Christopher Daniels in gives us a nice reality check. How are we doing comparatively to the other talent that's out there? Christopher Daniels, just to kind of go off on a rant for a second, is just outstanding. Everything that we heard about him is true and then some. Professionalism in the ring, his professionalism outside the ring, this guy will be a star. And to have him as part of our shows has been good in terms of having him shine in new markets and getting people to know who he is before he makes his break. And as well, it gives our guys an opportunity to see what talent in California, in this case, is all about. A guy like Tommy Dreamer or Carino does pop our houses somewhat. Carino, when he was here back in March, we saw our houses probably go up about 40 to 65%, which is quite good. A guy like, I like taking shots at Nova. He's my new best friend now. A guy like Nova successfully drove down business to a manageable level. And no, he was great. But, certain guys will have more of a marquee appeal, like a Tommy Dreamer, Carino, et cetera, have more of a marquee appeal than a Nova and a Daniels. But we've now worked with Daniels enough that we have created, to brag a little bit, we've now created the Christopher Daniels mystique up here, and people now definitely want to come see who he is.
Now, years ago, and I guess we're going back a little over 10 years now, and even more 20 years.
Right.
Oregon, especially, and they sometimes came to Washington. It was the Don Owens days, and maybe a little bit at the Sandy Bar days. It was one of those, it was one of the regional promotions, had great television, which I think was the whole key, and a lot of guys in the area ended up staying in the area, living in the area. I mean, what do you think about using those guys? And Brian, I want to ask you about that too, because you're in that area. What about Len Denton, Mike Miller? Are those guys not interested in wrestling? Buddy Rose, of course, would be the most famous of them. What are your thoughts on those type of guys?
Well, actually, you mentioned a name there, Buddy Rose. We've actually had him on a few of our shows, and regrettably, we had a bit of a falling out with him before the start of our last Vancouver, Washington show at the end of May, and pretty much parted ways at this point. Guys like Len Denton, Mark Miller, who else would be in that vein? Moondog Moretti and a few other guys.
Moondog Moretti lives in the area, sure.
Yeah, we have used those guys in our show. They've added a lot, and I think what guys like, I'm going to use probably the wrong term, like some of those older or veteran guys can do, is bring that experience to our dressing room. Sometimes I look around the dressing room and say, geez, the veterans in this room have been here 3 years. That's not always a good thing. And to have these guys help carve, right attitudes and, even just to share stories about the good old days or the bad old days allows these guys to learn something that I can't teach them. So having veterans on the show or having some of the legends in the Pacific Northwest involved with us is something we have done and hope to continue to do. And, even mention Brian or Chico there as well. I have not been able to meet his contract demands, so he hasn't been able to wrestle with us yet. But
that's right.
Similar to Goldberg, one
it's
day.
It's a promotional war.
For the love of God, one day I will get Chico Alvarez in an ECCW ring.
I am looking for a 9-year deal at $40 a night.
Oh boy, hey, you're in Callis territory now, brother.
That's right.
Tremendous.
Actually, a lot of those guys like Len and Billy Two Eagles and Ed Moretti and those guys.
Billy Two Eagles is another one, yeah.
Yeah, they work some of the local Oregon shows when like Pete Schweitzer promotes. They'll be on the show and do something there. And I think Len, Billy, and a couple of the guys run Tony Bourne's show, but they don't do a whole lot.
Yeah, Billy's worked with us quite a bit over the years. Himself and
how's he doing? Because Billy Two Eagles was actually a hell of a worker. I mean, he never really got a big push because he was a small guy in a big guy's world.
Yeah, He is outstanding. He has some personal issues he needs to work through, regrettably, before, during, and even after matches. And if he could have ever got those under control, he would have been a star beyond this territory. That said, he is just excellent. Himself and one of our guys, Juggernaut, have had some matches which have torn the house down. And 3 years ago, we brought up Sam Fatu from California there. Not the Fatu that you see now on television, of course.
Yeah, the other one.
The other one. The one that looks just like him.
The one that just, looks just like him. And when you see pictures of Sam Fatu and, what was his name? Tonga Kid, you go, what the hell happened? But nonetheless.
What the hell happened? Where did he get that other 170 pounds?
You're being nice at 170 pounds. But, but Sam Fatu and Billy Two Eagles had some of the most impressive and even psychology-filled hardcore matches that we've had up here. So Billy Two Eagles has been good with us. In fact, himself and our heavyweight champion, Dr. Luther, face off in Longview at the end of this month.
Before we get to calls, there's a couple of emails I want to get to. This is an interesting question, and I haven't thought about this, and I don't have a good answer. What female manager or wrestler did the best promos ever? Best woman on promos. Any of you guys got a name for that?
Female
who could do good promos.
Probably even the closest one I could think of is Luna, and that's not even a good one.
Yeah,
I was thinking right for a while.
I was thinking Ivory, as far as the ones that are around now. But, she's nothing special. She could do okay. The rest of them, the rest of them are kind of scary. God, did anyone? No, none of the WCW women ever did good promos, did they?
Kimberly was all right.
Kimberly wasn't bad. You're right. I would guess from what I was always told, Akira Hokuto was really good, but it was in Japanese, so I have no idea. Her delivery was excellent, but I don't know what she's saying as compared to the other Japanese women, but I would guess that some of those women would be very good. But as far as an American, God, they've been. See, I'm trying to think of some of the older managers and stuff like that. None of them were really great interviews, were they? Deborah McMichael. I'm just teasing here. Let's see. This is a question because I know you guys are familiar with bodybuilding and steroid use in wrestling. This has got nothing to do with steroids question, though. I have a question about legal supplements and which ones are the best. I'm a regular guy looking to lose 10 pounds. I exercise regularly and watch what I eat, but I've slid for about 2 years, and the last 10 pounds are very hard to lose. Are there any fat-burning supplements that are better than others? I've looked at Stackers, Rip Fuel, Metabolife, and Xenophene, but I haven't bought any yet. I have
basically all the same.
Okay, I've never used anything like that, so I really can't compare.
I would say that they're generally all the same. If you want to use them, you really should check with your doctor first, because for example, the other day on the news here, they're talking about you could die from certain supplements, and those are the ones they're talking about. But it's like, if you have a serious heart condition, yes, you may die. But at the same time, if you have a milk allergy, you might die if you drink milk too. So you might want to check to see if you have that. If you don't, they're generally all the same. Just do what the label says and don't go overboard.
But are they any different from diet pills that you get, either prescription diet pills or you can get at the pharmacy?
Yeah. In fact, I think that they're generally a lot safer than prescription diet stuff.
Okay, because I know a lot of women take, and men too, I'm sure, take diet pills, and I don't know, it's just one of those things I just have never.
Basically, if you get a normal ECA stack, and if you know anything about bodybuilding, you know what that is. Just take that and don't go overboard with it. All it does is basically speed you up a little bit. And you just burn more calories doing nothing. You get jittery for a couple of weeks, but then it goes away. And don't take it for more than 4 or 5 weeks at a time.
Do you get a rebound effect? Because one of the reasons in the old the diet pill thing with women that I always remember is that the women could drop a lot of weight on diet, and guys could drop a lot of weight on diet pills, but then you get the yo-yo that when you get off it, your metabolism's so slow that even if you continue your diet, you're going to start getting fat because your body, because you slowed your metabolism.
The whole thing is, they work for me because I actually do watch my diet, and at the end, when you're at the last couple of pounds and you want to get rid of them, you use those, and it helps you get rid of it, and you don't really have a rebound as long as after you go off them, you keep watching your diet. If you eat like an idiot and take these things, you might lose a couple of pounds, and you come off and you keep eating like an idiot, of course you're going to get fat again. That's the whole deal.
Okay, I want to get to a couple of these things here. We got a bunch of emails about the tirade at the beginning of the show. Your comparison of mixed martial arts and the women's boxing match is interesting. Yes, they are getting publicity, but it is rightly being called garbage and a sideshow, and it has nothing to do with real boxing, the same way Butterbean isn't a real boxer, the same way Felix Trinidad and some slug fighter from Iowa who get $100 around are not in the same league. That's all true, but Butterbean's on the same pay-per-views as Felix Trinidad at times. I mean, it's just part of the entertainment process. The thing is, though, it's like when we talk about mixed martial arts in boxing, but women's boxing, forget about boxing. Women's boxing, there's really no drawing cards. I mean, I think they tried to make Christy Martin a drawing card. I don't know if it really ever succeeded. I mean, she got a lot of publicity. But there aren't any, so they're going with this gimmick fight, and it's the most publicized women's boxing match that I have ever heard of, even though, one woman, one's a protected boxer, and the other one's not even really a boxer, which is Frazier's daughter. It's a fledgling sport looking for a publicity thing, and mixed martial arts in Japan is not a fledgling sport, but Fujita has done it. Takayama had done, shoot fights before, not a whole lot. So, I don't know. I mean, it drew the house. What can I say? It carries the thing. Let's see, where's the other one? This is from Atticus, who goes, it's a little strange to see guys fighting as headliners on Pride who would likely be beaten by most of the guys underneath. Actually, Fujita would beat most of those guys underneath just because he's a better wrestler. Takayama, just because he's so huge, would beat some of the smaller guys. Maybe he wouldn't, actually. I don't know. But they're carrying the card.
That's a marquee match, though. Why sell 18,000 tickets for a match and put it on first?
Well, because everybody would go home if you did it, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, they're in the main event because they sold the tickets. So that's the basic gist, and that's why they have the fight. That's why they use pro wrestlers in Pride, is because it's like if theoretically, it doesn't work here because we have a different culture, but theoretically, if we had a similar culture, and Bill Goldberg, just as a name, Bill Goldberg wanted to do, and he was still hot also, Bill Goldberg wanted to do UFC. UFC would probably sell more tickets with Bill Goldberg than they would, absolutely would with any of the guys that they have right now. Now, UFC doesn't want to go in that direction, but if somebody else were to do that, and Bill Goldberg's fight is a real fight, and all of a sudden they become number one in the industry, is that wrong, or is that just good promoting, good business? I mean, I don't know. It's probably just good business. This is the other one who says, this is from Frankie, who goes, but the fight sucked. Have you seen the fight? The other fights were great. Actually, I thought that fight, as I said yesterday, I saw the fight, and it was a hell of a fight. I mean, it probably shouldn't have been, and I didn't expect it to be, but it was a hell of a fight.
The fight sucked.
It didn't suck,
okay,
actually.
First off, if you haven't seen the fight, don't say that. And second off, if you have seen the fight, how do you know a fight's going to suck before the thing's over?
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
You can't put something on first because you expect it to be a bad fight.
Yeah. I'm sure people don't. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure that they don't want it. That they think that it shouldn't have been on.
Yeah.
Although Fujita by his record deserves. Hey, it was lucky, but he beat Ken Shamrock, who's a real fighter. He beat Mark Kerr, who's a real fighter. His record, he is undefeated. I mean, he has every reason to be on there. Plus, in the right position, he can draw. Just because he's IWGP champion doesn't mean he should be banned from another sport. If he can, you know what I mean? And he won't beat Coleman. I don't think he'll beat Coleman unless Coleman gets tired. But that's another issue. Anyway, let's start with Will. Will, what's up?
My name's Pitt.
Who? What? Okay, let's go to Hector.
Hello. You were talking about the Layla Ali versus Frazier fight.
Yes.
And it is going to be the first big show headline by a woman. You were asking that earlier.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I was talking to Brian yesterday in the chat room about Mike Awesome being the stalker, and he said that wouldn't be good because it would make him a regular performer. What do you think about that?
If they have the right, I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not.
Go ahead.
I'm not against the idea of Mike Awesome as the stalker. I mean, it means that they gotta, do a real big, great character with Mike Awesome, which wouldn't be the worst idea because after the gimmicks, he's been saddled with a blade. But no, I don't think that's, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. He's got some size. He's good. He's a good athlete and everything. And whoever comes in there is put in a position where they can be somebody right away. So that's good. That's how you get.
I just don't like the idea of taking a guy that could actually help out the WCW side and putting him in the WWF.
But
Mike Awesome isn't as big a name that could really help out the other side, but he is one of the big names that they have right now.
Yeah,
Why
and
waste
he's
one of
also
those
the
guys
tallest.
by putting him in the WWF?
He's also the tallest, so he wouldn't look that bad against Undertaker. So
Yeah,
You
but
know, I'll
he's
tell
one
you
of
what.
those things, though, where you don't want to expose how small... I shouldn't say how small he is, but how much smaller he is than guys like Kane and Undertaker and Big Show and Albert.
You'll be surprised at how small Mike Awesome is next to Undertaker, but he does have enough size to do the match. I mean, it's not like he's gonna. It's not like he's a 6 foot tall guy going against the Undertaker. He's, Mike Awesome's probably legitimately 6'4", so he can stand there, and he's got good musculature and everything like that. I mean, he's weight wise. I mean, again, I don't know what he's looked like lately, but I know that whatever it was like a couple of weeks ago when Ross went to Florida, I mean, he was down to 240, I think. He was and ripped. So next to Undertaker, who's probably, I would say, legitimately, Undertaker's well over 3 because he's not in great shape. He could look small. I mean, it'd almost be better if he got it to like 260, 270 like he was before. But no, he worked. He was a hardworking guy. I don't think that. Believe me, that's Mike Awesome is better than 90% of the names that we've had thrown at us. I think for that role.
That's true.
and he's good
Maybe
with
95%.
He's good with small wrestlers too, like Tanaka. He had good matches with him. So
He's
Yeah,
better
but
with
Tanaka
small
was
guys.
awesome. It was more Tanaka being great than Mike Awesome being good with a good small guy.
But he had a few good matches with small people though. And
No, Awesome always works. Awesome works better with smaller guys.
Yeah.
Because he's
Yes, it
better
was
at being
Spike,
a bully. He's better at being a bully.
Yeah.
So.
A question about Vince. Will he have final say on every WCW angle, or will Shane have some power in real life?
Everyone has power, but Vince has final say on everything. Everything in the world in professional wrestling. Unless it has to do with Japan, Vince has final say. Even independents, if Vince calls him up and go, you're rubbing me the wrong way, and if you ever want to do business with me, if he actually would do this, which you wouldn't, he'd probably have final say on them, too.
Is there a date for Rock's return?
Like an actual date?
Yeah.
No, it's whenever they're done filming and they feel that they're ready. I'm guessing,
By summer?
like end of July or early August is what I'm guessing as far as a date.
So the SummerSlam main event, nobody knows yet? No.
SummerSlam. I mean, they don't
They
know.
have ideas, but
I think the idea is Austin and Rock. That's what I think it is. I even could say I know that that's a half-ass idea is Austin and Rock, but I mean they could go somewhere else. I mean they could easily change it, as they always do.
And the last thing about the idea, I was telling you, I emailed you the other day about moving WCW to Monday. I think that's the best thing because I don't know. I just see the WWF fans might look at WCW if it struggles for 1 or 2 weeks and that's it in another night, but not on Mondays. I think it's a pattern already to watch for most people. I know some
Monday's traditional wrestling night for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll find WWF. They might not find WCW if it's...
Well, I think pretty much all WWF fans know about Monday night and Thursday night. So if WWF is on, if that were to happen, WCW on Monday and SmackDown on Thursday, if that were to be the idea, everyone's going to know about SmackDown, and they'll know the new thing right away. And it's just a question of, the big thing is, one of the on that issue. I mean, the big thing is you're TNN, right? And your network is being, let's face it. I mean, TNN's doing a lot of propaganda, but realistically, nobody watches their network except for Monday night in that time slot. And it's carrying the whole network to number 10 in the ratings. And if WCW came in just theoretically and did half the rating of what Raw is doing, or slightly more than half, or even slightly less than half, that 0.9 thing they're bragging about all of a sudden goes to like an 0.6 or 0.7. They're not going to be happy, and so therefore, like if that suggestion were to be made, you can see the executives, if they're smart enough to figure out what we just talked about, which they may not be, but they probably are actually. They'd be like scared to death.
I'm not saying replace the WWF with WCW just on Mondays, but move the WWF to another night better than just giving WCW another night. If
so they still have Raw,
so
SmackDown, and a Nitro show?
Yeah, if they're giving another show for WCW, because that's the plan right now, to get another show for WCW, right?
Right. That's what they would like to do,
WCW going to that new night, it's better for the WWF to go into that new night and WCW replace them on Mondays. That's what I'm saying. Because that new show will be in a night that's not typical for wrestling, most likely, and that the WWF is much better suited for that than WCW coming in new at a new night.
It's one of many ideas being kicked around. I mean, they could be kicked around. I think that they really want to keep a live night, though. If you under that idea, Sunday's already locked for pay-per-views for the most part. So as far as a live night, you could do a Saturday television taping, let's say Tuesday for WWF. You make the Saturday night show a TV taping, and then Sunday's pay-per-view. Then the Monday taping would be WCW, and then the Tuesday taping would be SmackDown. It can be done. Yeah, it can be done. I don't know if they want to do that, but yeah, it could be done.
All right. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay. Let's go to Alan. Alan, what's up?
Several different things to talk about.
Okay.
Remember, the other guy was asking about, who's going to feud with the Undertaker, stalking him. Do you think his wife? Do you think this would be a good idea? I don't know if this would make sense, but maybe having where like Kane and Undertaker are brothers, having like a third brother.
Oh, I hope not.
You mentioned that yesterday.
Like maybe I was thinking of having. I don't know if it would make sense. Brian Lee. Remember how he was the second Undertaker?
No. That's a bad idea. You just made the idea really bad. Brian Lee is out of the question.
Oh, he's out of the business?
Well, he's just not any good.
Oh.
So, you don't want to bring in somebody who isn't any good. Then again, Leviathan's not ready either, so.
Yeah. I can't think of anybody else you could bring. It's I don't know, somebody.
Any 6'8" guys that could wear masks running around?
I'm sure plenty of them could wear masks.
I was also looking at the website.
Giant Silva with a mask on.
Oh, God.
On
the tallest brother.
On the website about, how, the WWF, which is smart, after a while when a lot of the wrestlers, when The Rock and Austin might retire and stuff, those developmental guys, they have a lot of guys I've noticed, big guys that they have in development. You think those guys will probably be the future of wrestling?
They better be.
I mean, because they need them. That's why they're thinking ahead.
Some of them, I think, will definitely be at least superstars. I don't know about the future.
They better be. Hey, you're going to have...
I guess long term they have to be the future, but...
I was talking with somebody high up in the WWF, and they got really taken aback. Did I tell you the story where they said, it's very important, that this thing happens? And I go, yeah, it's important. I go, because without it, in 3 years, you're dead. Mm-hmm. And he was like, he was kind of surprised I said that. And I go, no, really. If you can't consistently develop new talent, and this is the story of the business. I mean, if you look at the history of every company in this business that's gone down, generally speaking, it's either, poor management, but also the inability to keep bringing in new talent to focus into that top card mix. When you keep running the same, no matter how good your main events are, when you're in the same main events over and over and over, people get tired of it and they want new guys. And you got to constantly be able to create new stars. So that Ohio Valley thing, those guys, some of those, not all of them are going to make it, but some of them have to make it. I mean, they have to, or there's been a lot of trouble.
I'm sure there's others in the making. They must have hundreds of guys in the developmental contract, or at least 40.
No, not hundreds, but they got a couple dozen.
I mean, I'm sure they're always looking to get more people, though. And so
they're not looking that hard now, believe it or not. I mean, before WCW folded, they were trying to get anyone with potential. Now, because they have so many guys and they don't have spots for them, they're not really looking for developmental guys as much as they were, even 6 months ago.
But if somebody's good, though, I'm sure they'll sign them to a developmental deal if they're good enough.
If they think they got super potential, absolutely, sure.
One guy I think that has a good future is Sean O'Hare. I mean, who's with the under WCW deal. If they can develop an interviews with him or give him a good manager, yeah, everybody did. Bischoff was super high on Sean O'Hare too. Everybody was really. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a few more quick questions. You were talking about that Macho Man Savage, whatever, starting a group. Say if I read on a news board that he's been talking to WCW. I guess they meant Time Warner because I doubt he's talking to McMahon or whatever.
Yeah,
but he's talking about looking to sign guys if he could, like Goldberg, Nash, and the Chronic, the tag team Chronic.
Yes.
He can have Chronic.
Could you see Hogan and Macho Man separately running two groups? I mean, I guess regardless if they have team or not.
If they each have money behind them, and they'll run, and if they don't have money behind them, they won't. I don't see one having a lot to do with the other, and I mean, I almost think that Hogan and Savage will end up together anyway because they always do.
I heard, on a Honky Tonk Man board, it said that he has a grudge against him now or something.
They used to hate each other, and then they came to WCW and made tons of money together, and you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And then when there was no more money to be made with each other, they started hating each other again. That's just wrestling. They'll be friends if they need to be. The thing with Savage, though, he's really old, and remember how bad he was at the end? He could never move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know about You know, and
I
if
think
he's
Dave
running,
Republic would know just as much as anybody that sometimes promoters, they say a lot of things. And Randy Savage saying he's talking with Goldberg and Time Warner means absolutely nothing.
I mean,
promoters always tell the truth, Brian. I'm not sure what you're implying.
Is there enough talent not going to WCW, you know, that they don't want, that would be able to be spread out between two groups starting up, like even you know, Hogan and Macho Man say they did start up two separate groups?
That people care about?
Yeah.
I doubt it.
There may not be enough for one. I mean, the whole key is who gets the strong television. I mean, it's not the guys. Whoever gets a strong television will get the guys. It's getting the TV, and until you hear that somebody has a locked-in prime time or good time slot television deal. I mean, these are all things that we can talk about, but don't take any of them seriously until the TV deal is signed.
And do you think it would be weird that either if Hogan or Macho Man could get Goldberg, and I mean, if they actually got a deal with him before McMahon, wouldn't it be kind of bad on McMahon's half not to give him the money versus letting them just get him, or you don't think it would matter?
I don't think McMahon's sweating it until they have a TV deal. If they have a TV deal, I'll bet you McMahon signs Goldberg. We'll buy that Goldberg contract. If they have a TV deal that he has to take seriously. Right now they don't have it, so McMahon has no. There's no impetus for McMahon to sign someone for that kind of money. Just this moment, as far as like the competition.
Except his new brand could die.
Except his new brand can die, but they're not thinking about that. They won't think about that until it starts to die. You know, but I'm just saying today when they're not considering that. But if somebody's out there.
Oh God, I just look
I
at
know,
it
Brian, and I do agree with you.
I mean,
Go ahead,
the whole
Brian.
thing with they do it every time. They wait till things start getting bad to worry about the future, and then you're at the point where it's not that it's too late, but why the hell wasn't this stuff thought about earlier? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like all of a sudden Hunter gets an injury, and it's, oh my God, we got no top baby faces. Well, exactly. It's because you didn't, you pushed nobody as being in the league of Hunter and Austin, and then Hunter gets hurt, and now you're screwed. You got to push Chris Jericho, who you just spent the last 3 weeks burying. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, great. You're going to wait till WCW starts to die and then go, maybe we should bring in Goldberg. Well, why didn't you think about that earlier?
Well, that's why they need to do it, and that's why they need to buy that contract, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Did you hear about that Memphis Legends card?
Yep. What about it?
Oh, you know about the matches, right? I was going to mention it.
I mean, I actually don't know the matches themselves. I mean, I know Lawler and Humongous, but I don't know. I actually don't know who's wrestling. I know guys on the card, but I don't know who they're wrestling. Other than I think Sonny Ono's going to wrestle the Cat or something.
I think Cat versus Sonny Ono. What is? I guess it's Jerry Lawler's wife against some mystery lady by Sonny Ono.
That's Jerry Lawler's wife.
Yeah.
Is the Cat?
Yeah.
I think she's wrestling Sonny Ono.
Oh, it says Sonny Ono's mystery.
God.
Yeah.
And then
maybe it'd be Sonny Ono's sister.
Gotta have a legendary bad match, apparently.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more quick question. Your opinions on two things.
Okay.
I don't follow it that well, but I have interest in it, but I don't follow it as much as you two do. What people in the Ultimate Fighting or shoot fighters, and plus what wrestlers in Mexico like luchadors, would you think any of them would fit well? Like say when WCW starts up, right? And they run a cruiserweight.
Shoot fighters to come in.
Well, as far as this has to do with lightweights or cruiserweights. Say how the lightweight division.
Did you ask which Ultimate Fighters are shooters?
Well, this is two separate.
No. As far as cruiserweights, to me, WCW has enough cruiserweights. That's not what they need to concentrate on. Now, if someone is like so spectacular, like say Shima, just as an example, sure, I would want to sign him. Okay, I mean, because he's really spectacular. But their strength right now is smaller guys. I wouldn't. You want to get those smaller guys to where the smaller guys mean something. You don't need to bring in 10 new ones. You need to bring in some headliners now. I look at that WCW lineup, and when the guys they have on the roster, and I look at it and I go, they got a great first 4 matches on the card. We got a contract on those top 4 because those are suspect.
Do you think they have enough cruiserweights or lightweights or whatever for both?
They have enough. They have enough to start, and there's nobody that's going to be the make or break like a Bill Goldberg in the cruiserweight division. If there's somebody, like I said, if they want to sign Ricky Marvin to add 1 new guy, sure, go do it. But it's like the idea of adding 5 new cruiserweights. I just don't. There's no purpose for them to do that.
I mean, are there certain guys in Mexico that wrestle for EMLL or any of the others that you think?
They got great workers in Mexico. No, I mean not all of them, but there's great workers. Sometimes you don't know how they'll translate coming up here, and then also the problem is that the guys here don't understand what they're doing, so that kind of hinders them as well. Like a guy like Parka, like nobody got what he was doing, so he kind of got buried.
Mm-hmm. What about guys my other question was like guys that shoot fight or whatever. Like, like they were a while back. There was talk about WCW starting a group with some of the shoot fighters with Tank Abbott.
Yeah, Tank Abbott was a big success, wasn't he? But no, I mean, I know too well about ideas with WCW with Street Fighters. Just the bookers didn't. Here's the deal: is there were people in that company who understood exactly how to do it because they were well-rounded people, but the bookers did not fall in that category, and the bookers had no clue what to do. And Tank Abbott's the perfect example. It's got to be done there's only one way to do it. There's no guarantee of a success doing it that way, but any other way is a guaranteed failure, and they did it one of those other ways. And so WCW would not have been able to make that work. There's no chance they could have made it work because they don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Did you see any of the guys in UFC or any of the groups, like any of them that would have potential, like say if the WWF signed them to a developmental deal, or just any,
they got Ron Waterman in Ohio Valley who's doing pretty good right now.
But it had to be someone with the look like a Mark Coleman or a Mark Kerr.
Do you think
I don't know about Mark Kerr. Mark Coleman should be a star in Japanese pro wrestling if they give him a shot like Don Fry was.
Don Fry's supposed to be pretty good, isn't he?
For New Japan, he's very good at because he understands what he needs to do. He's not a great worker, but he's a great personality. Mm-hmm. Mark Coleman has the potential to be a really good worker. I mean, but he's starting pretty old. But again, he's got the credential, and the credential helps over in Japan. It doesn't mean as much here.
You could see the WWF signing any of those guys, though. You don't think?
Oh, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, they've been interested in Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr in the past. I mean, they're not interested in Mark Kerr anymore, but they might be interested in Coleman still if he were to come in. They don't seem that interested in Fry. Last I asked, Tito Ortiz, he's got a good personality and stuff. But you don't know, like with the credential doesn't mean anything because UFC in the United States is not big enough to where the transfer over means something, whereas in Japan it is big enough to where the transfer over means something.
It was big though in the beginning, but then what?
Well, and they used Shamrock, and Shamrock did get over actually Shamrock got over way more than his push too at the beginning because of the thing.
One thing is the interviews on UFC and the personality. It doesn't necessarily translate over well into wrestling because. I mean, just look at Tank Abbott when he was in UFC. He cut what people thought were great promos, and all of a sudden he's in WCW, and they're hideous.
Well, the same with Shamrock. Remember, Shamrock was a great interview on UFC, and then he went into WWF, and he was trying to play a character, and he was, terrible at playing the character. His interviews were his weakness. Got a couple of emails, a lot of response
to... Figure 4 Weekly does come out weekly, for those of you wondering.
Oh. I want to make mention of two things real quick. Two names that people have sent in as far as the best female talker. One is Sherry Martel, who I always loved Sherry Martel as a performer, but not her interviews. And Tammy Sitch, when she was Tammy Fitch in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, was a very good talker. And at the beginning of Sunny in WWF, she was good. I would say that she was probably the best that I could come up with, too. We have one more person who says, Richard Sullivan says, Malaya Hosaka never got a chance to talk, but she's the best. She would make a kick-ass announcer, and you should get her on the show. So I've never seen her do interviews, so you're probably right. Let's see. Here's another one about Sunny. And will the WWF be brave enough to bring Hunter back as a tweener, or will he instantly kill the Pops with a run-in and a trash the audience promo? They got to bring him in as babyface. It's like too. Don't throw away the obvious, Yep. Let's see. As far as the identity of the stalker, how about Scott Steiner? Scott Steiner's got a foot injury. I don't think he's going to be able to wrestle that soon. What did you think about putting WCW on from 7 to 9 or 8 to 9 right before Raw? The people tuning into Raw before 9 would probably see the end of WCW and want to check it out.
You're asking people to sit through 4 straight hours of wrestling. And I understand it's 2 different shows, but still, that's a hell of a long time.
4 hours is too much. Although I used to watch 5 when they had 3 of WCW and 2 of WWF. It was sometimes hard. Sometimes, and some weeks it was good too. Dave, what's your thoughts as far as the Monday Night TV situation? If you were running everything, how would you handle WCW?
Well, funny enough, with WCW, I would probably go back to something we kind of talked about earlier on, and that is turn WCW into the premier touring company in North America. I mean, there's a lot of secondary markets and so on where they could probably do some very good house business, give their developmental talent some real developmental exposure, and at the same time create stars in different markets that they're just unable to do so. As far as television, I think they do need a 1-hour product. I mean, some people might say, well, 2 hours to get over storylines, etc. But as far as what I would do with WCW is that's an opportunity to get some of the younger guys over. And so I know a lot of people will disagree with that. They'll say, well, geez, why did Vince buy that? He could have done a lot with it without buying that. However, what Vince, I think, bought was wrestling history. He bought a catalog. He bought contracts to augment the talent already in WWF, turned WCW into a touring company for developmental talent, as well as some stars in WCW, throw in the occasional surprise WWF star run-in, and you have a hell of a touring product that put a lot of indies out of business.
The other thing he bought is he bought a monopoly.
That's right.
He bought leverage. He bought leverage for everyone in their contract negotiations, which is, I think, the key thing, because he knew the TV landscape, and believe me, he knew it. And the other one who knew it was Heyman, because Heyman told me about it before anyone.
Well, with advertising revenue down, no matter what market you're in, whether in your print or God knows internet or wherever, advertising revenue's down. Live venue revenue, I don't want to say it's at an all-time high, but it's definitely nowhere near the lows of probably like the mid-'90s or earlier '90s. So I think these guys can do a lot with live events.
We got an email here from Japan from someone about this topic that we've actually been talking about the whole show. And he goes, I really can't understand the fact that so-called mixed martial arts fans simply can't or refuse to see the obvious. These days we get bigger shows filled with the best fighters in the world, all earning more money than they've ever had the opportunity to earn in their lives, and for the most part they're taken care of very well. It's not so bad if you have to, quote, suffer watching two pro wrestlers fight each other if they are actually the guys making that money to help pay for all the other fighters. Is it so hard to accept or understand? It reminds me of the kind of a wrestling fan on the internet who would be outraged that Tajiri would sign with the WWF and earn a comfortable living doing very little when he should be working in Japan for some small promotion, destroying his body for no money. People need to wake up to the real world. Business is business. In the end, no money equals no promotion. It couldn't be more simple. Sure, you might prefer to watch a camcorder tape of some guys mauling each other on a beach in Brazil, but I'm pretty sure the fighters themselves will take the Pride bookings over that any day of the week, even if it means working on the same show as evil pro wrestlers. Pride is very big in Japan, but it's only because of the stars, not the sport. Sakuraba was on TV almost daily earlier this year, but other than him or Hickson Gracie, there are so few real fighters that the average fan or person in Japan even knows. I asked my friends here or my girlfriend's family what they thought about the Vitor Belfort versus Heath Herring fight. They have no clue who either guy is, but that everyone in the country knows who Fujita is, just like everyone knows who Ogawa and Hashimoto are. You don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to know them. They're all over the media. Last month, Hashimoto was modeling clothes in a magazine I saw, which is even scarier than it sounds. That is, by the way, pretty scary, isn't it?
It wasn't the swimsuit.
It wasn't like a thong. Anyway, if mixed martial arts can exploit the popularity and mainstream exposure that pro wrestlers have in Japan, it's a good thing for the sport. That's kind of what we've been saying. I don't see what's so difficult about understanding the business aspect of all that.
I don't either, but some people do.
Yeah, I think because I look at everything, as a business.
We examine the business every day of our lives.
And we look at everything as a business because, I've been around wrestling so much that I have seen so many companies go out of business because they don't look at it as a business. And it's like that's what in mixed martial arts as well. UFC here, and part of it, there's a lot of problems with the cable companies. But if UFC put on, the greatest fighters in the world and none of them had any charisma and nobody cared who they were, they would be out of business even though they'll be putting on great fights. You've got the key to UFC. If UFC is going to make it. What?
Look at Rings.
Rings is on its last legs. No, but UFC here in
this and what do they have left?
Yeah. But with UFC, if UFC is going to make it or not make it in the long run, it is incumbent on them to create stars that people want to see fight. Because, and in Japan, people want to see Fujita fight. They know who he is. They want to see Ogawa fight. Obviously, look at the TV ratings. Everyone wants to see Ogawa fight. That's the key. And that's what you got to exploit. They don't know who these other great fighters are. They don't know who, Heath Herring is, general public. That's why I keep saying.
Yeah, I have a lot of people. That used to love watching UFC, and when the cable thing happened and they could no longer watch it, if I went up to them today and I said, hey, guess what? UFC is back on cable. We can watch a show, say, this Friday, they would all say the same thing. Is Hoist Gracie going to be on it? Is Ken Shamrock going to be on it? And if I said no, there's a very good possibility they would say, well, I really don't want to see it. I'm afraid that UFC is looking at this like, all we need is to get cable TV, and all of a sudden we will be a great success.
No, they need to create stars. They need to create stars. And
that's not the case. They need to create stars.
They need to, yeah. And the one thing, Pride created stars by using people who were existing stars, which were the pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
It's actually...
And there's going to be plenty of pro wrestlers in the future that they can use if Fujita gets destroyed and all these guys get destroyed, they can always go back to them because it's accepted in Japan.
That, in some sense, you got to give them credit for a really good business model because they're making it.
Mm-hmm.
They created a sport. It's hard to create a sport. Look at the women's soccer league or the XFL. I mean, creating a sport, it's pretty tough. Let's go to Mike in Phoenix. Mike, what's up? Yes, Mike.
How's it going?
Hey.
It's going good.
Thanks for putting me on the show again.
You're welcome.
Can we talk about Pride?
Sure.
Why not?
I just bought a New Blood, and I have Return of the Warriors. Do you think those are good tapes or not?
I'm not. I mean, I'm familiar with the shows, but I'm not familiar with the names of the shows. So, what matches are on the tape, and I can tell you about those.
New Blood. It has like Rigo Rodriguez and Gary Goodridge.
That was kind of boring.
Okay, Igor Vernchanchin and Matsui.
I
Igor
think that was Igor Matsui. I remember the fight. I think Igor mauled him pretty good.
Do you want me to go over a couple more? Is that okay?
Yeah, good. What were the main events? Because I'll remember the show from the main events better.
I guess Heath Herring and Willie Peters.
That was like 30 seconds. Heath Herring just killed him.
Really? Yeah, I like Pride though. It's pretty cool.
I mean, it's they have good fights and bad fights. It's just, I mean, what's important about Pride is that right now in this world of professional wrestling, there are only a few companies that are doing really big business, and they are Pride, New Japan, and of course WWF. So, kind of have to cover the ones that are. You know what I mean? And so Pride's a big deal right now.
Hey, could I throw a wrestling name out to you that I want to use?
Sure.
A wrestling name that you want to use is when you're a wrestler?
Yeah.
Okay, shoot.
Scotty Smashmouth.
That's hot. Go with that.
He likes it.
That's money written all over it.
As long as the first and last name start with an S. If you were Frankie Smashmouth, it would not work.
No, Brian's got it. And as well, you change your name to an ethnic, race that you're not part of.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know, Chico Smashmouth. That's got money all over it again. And you bring in the ethnic communities as well.
How about Tiger Ali Smashmouth?
Are you pulling my leg?
No, as a promoter, I can tell you that's.
We're laughing at you.
Send me your tape.
Now, the Tiger Ali was pulling your leg, absolutely.
Oh, well, I just thought like a blonde hair. It's kind of a rip-off of Scott Steiner, I guess. But
well, anytime you can imitate Steiner, that's money. Oh, I mean, look at Saturn.
Okay, it's a bad idea.
Okay, make him feel bad. Come on. He's really trying.
Dude, there's
He's
nothing
got
wrong
his
with
bald
it.
head being kissed. He's wearing bra and panties. Superstar.
In the grand scheme of things, your name really doesn't matter as long as you're a good wrestler.
No,
Yeah,
but keep focusing on the name. If that's all you got right now, focus.
Oh, no. You know what? I mean, on the indie scene, I always think, and Brian, I think that a lot of guys in the indie scene should just pretty much go by their name unless they're top, the main eventers, just because the name doesn't really matter anyway.
I'll tell you this. That's another reason I hate that Chico name. Because I really don't want to have some goofball gimmick or name. I really don't. I'm happy just being Brian.
Sounds like you need to switch promotions then, work for a promoter who allow you to have that freedom.
Oh, well, anyway, I will not make a comment about that. But I have noticed that a lot of indie guys, they're more concerned about what their gimmick name is going to be, or what their gimmick is going to be, or what their angle is going to be, as opposed to just learning how to wrestle.
Yeah, because at that stage, the most important thing is to get experience in the ring and learn how to wrestle. And at the beginning, I what I think is so good about the Japanese system. There I go talking about that. Is that those young guys? And Brian, you ever watching Dave as far as like Japanese preliminary matches on a New Japan card? They're awesome because
just the real basic wrestling, the black trunks, the black boots.
They go black trunks, black boots. They just got to wrestle, and they got to do that for a year and a half until they actually know how to wrestle. And then when the promotion kind of feels like, okay, they know what they're doing. This is the old system, and it's hard to do now because there's not enough companies. They would ship them to Europe or ship them to Calgary or ship them to the United States for a year, have them grow their hair, and bring them back with a gimmick and bring them back with a push, but they already have the ability. If they don't have the ability, all that other stuff, it's like a waste of your time.
Let me ask the caller, are you going to a wrestling school, or do you have your name down pat right now?
No, I plan to go to wrestling school in about 6 months or so.
Which school?
I'm leaning towards Les Thatcher.
Sorry, Les Thatcher.
Les Thatcher. Yeah.
That's good. As long as you got the school part down, too. You're not just coming up with gimmick names. And
I was just thinking of a name. I mean, yeah, first I know that you need to go to school, of course. That's first and foremost.
Actually, first and foremost, I would say get in shape, then go to the school.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure when you go there, you're in really good cardio shape and your body looks real tight, and go in there with the attitude that, like, no matter what they do with you, you're not going to quit. Because they will, I'm not saying that Les is going to try to, like, brutalize you like Buddy Lee Parker, because he's not.
Or break your leg.
I mean, the whole thing is that you really, when you go in there, you really want to make a good first impression, and you don't want to, like, cramp up the first day, because it's just, even though it's going to hurt, and no matter what you do, it's not going to be quite ready for the first day, but just, like, the better shape you're in, the better you're going to do.
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
Learn how to wrestle.
What?
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Talk to you later.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Mike. Okay, we're going to go to Morgan. Morgan, what's up?
How you doing?
Oh my
We're
God,
doing good.
girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
New for you, little girl, talking to a girl?
Hi, I
Oh, my
have a
God.
couple questions for
Oh.
Mr. Republic.
Oh, it's for
hey,
Dave
wait, I heard my
Republic.
name.
Man, you see, this is what it is. We bring in one of the Hardy Boys again, and this is what happens. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering, since I'm from the whole Pacific Northwest area, who are some of your upcoming talent in ECCW?
Oh, geez. We've been pretty fortunate. We've had guys go through our school. We've had guys join us. But, I mean, guys that are just standouts right now, Scotty Mack, he's a young guy. He's actually one of our junior heavyweight champions and actually may have a chance with Matt Rats out in Calgary. But he's doing really well for us. Chance Beckett, outstanding.
How's Torch doing?
Torch, well, he lost his mask in the epic.
Oh, that's right. He lost his mask.
In the epic feud with me last year, and he ended up taking on a much different persona called Adam Firestorm.
That's right.
So, yeah, he's doing really well. Michelle Starr, kind of our classic heel and good guy, depending on wherever he is. He can.
How's he doing? I used to know him before he was a wrestler.
Yeah. Oh, he talked about you.
Mark Velios. I mean, I used to talk to him all the time when he was before he even broke in.
Well, a lot of people won't know. Obviously, you would know. He tried to start his own newsletter probably around the same time you started yours.
I think he did it. I think he may have done a newsletter for a very short period of time.
He did, but I mean, the challenge that because he can't read or write, I mean, wow, that's kind of
difficult.
But I mean, scrawl is good. I mean, Chico knows that. But
Russo tried to do the same thing.
But he also was on the ring crew when he was 16 for the WWF and did all sorts of errands and stuff for Pat Patterson. Insert joke here. And,
oh boy.
Yeah, and
so is that where he got the gimmick from?
Oh, I'm sure it was handed down to him.
Oh boy.
Or passed to him. But I mean, Starr is an awesome talent. He also has been instrumental in getting us our overseas deals. We have he was the booker for about the last year with IWA Japan and also with WWA Pro Wrestling Korea, and that's allowed us to have our guys go overseas and gain even more exposure. And Starr as well as our head trainer with our wrestling schools. We have 2 full-time facilities, one in Portland, Oregon, one in Langley, British Columbia, and we have a new one opening up in Everett, Washington. So, Chico, I invite you to come up for that. So we're trying to get facilities available so that we can, what we talked about earlier, having developmental talent, so we can constantly have talent available for our shows, especially with our ambition of growing to 200 shows next year.
How is Korea and wrestling viewed in Korea? Because we never hear about Korea at all.
It's funny because I mentioned that to some of the Korean guys that we have over. Jason the Terrible, who he's probably one of many Jason the Terribles, but he's the Ralphie.
Is he the famous Jason the Terrible?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. He's the one who's most over, I guess, with the gimmick. He talks about the fact that their shows do fairly well. I mean, they get about 2,000 people, if not more. And of course, I'm talking to another promoter when I get these numbers, so I'm sure they're accurate. But they get some decent crowds. They're just not very good at advertising after the fact. And I think that really hurts them. There's really not a lot of knowledge that there's wrestling going on, and it's a fairly vibrant scene over in Korea. Our guys have been over quite a few times. In fact, Star's going back over for a tour from the 13th of this month to the 18th. So it's very good for us, and it gives our talent some additional exposure.
Hi, I just had one last question, and that had to deal with Burt Prentice's USA Championship Wrestling, and I was kind of wondering, what did you guys think was going to happen with that?
I really don't know.
You don't know?
I mean, I just know that. I just know that they started, and I don't. Nashville scene has always been weird to me. I never. Bert like always opens up, sells it, says he's never going to be back in wrestling ever again, and then he always ends up back running.
Well, I'll make a prediction. I bet you he puts over Mike Rapata.
Oh, come on now.
That'll be hot. That's again another money guy. Wow, he took the NWA title to new heights. That guy.
That's right. Mike turned heel on Jerry Lawler on whatever Friday night or Saturday night, whenever they had their first show.
Right,
that was the first angle.
Wow.
And Brian Christopher's coming to get revenge on this week, Saturday night
and
at the
they
fairgrounds.
also had the East Coast return of Bart Sawyer.
Yeah,
Bart Sawyer was Sean O'Hare.
Bart's been good for us as well. He's worked quite a few matches for us when he's come up here. He kind of bounces around between different places, but the girls seem to like him and does well for us. And Burt Prentice loves him in Nashville.
Anything else?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We only get like women callers
We need to get more
like
girls calling in.
Well, put me on the show.
They're so polite and they ask smart questions.
Yeah, I mean, like when we had like the Hardys and Edge and Christian on, it was like all the time, and then as soon as they like wouldn't let us have those guys, that was it.
Well,
demographic shock.
Jerry Lynn, don't forget Jerry Lynn.
Well,
Jerry Lynn had the most interesting women callers, but Matt Hardy had the most by far.
So by my having one, does that outdo anyone?
That outdoes about 90%
let's see. I would
of our
say
guests.
it outdoes almost every person except for Edge, Christian, Matt Hardy. We never had Jeff Hardy on, but you probably couldn't outdo him. Bret Hart always had women callers. Is there anybody else that ever had women callers in the show?
Yeah, but I mean women callers that weren't calling maternity suits, though.
Yeah, that's about it.
Oh, jeez. You know what you haven't asked me, Dave?
What?
Well, a lot, but I mean, what you haven't asked me is...
Ask yourself the question, because this is our final segment, and if you don't get it out, you're not going to get it out. So if I don't have the question, you better ask it right now.
You haven't asked me anything about your favorite organization, the NWA. As you know, we are the NWA affiliate for the Pacific Northwest.
That you sure are.
We sure are, and in spite of the incompetence of our board of directors, ECCW's done really well, and I don't think you stress that enough.
Now, I got a question. Speaking of NWA, what are your thoughts as far as the NWA World Heavyweight Championship? I mean, you brought in Carino.
Yeah.
Is the ability to get the champion and some of the choices of champions, whether it be Dan Severn, Naoya Ogawa, if there's like something with Otani or Hashimoto or any of these things, where do you like? Because I know there's a lot of the NWA people don't like the fact that Howard Brody's always negotiating with Japan and trying to get the belt on a big name that actually never works for the NWA.
Well, I think some of that might be Howard's negotiating skills or lack thereof, but we in NWA ECCW, we've always tried to have a champion in. We had Severn in back in 1988. We became a member in 97, so we had him in 98. We tried to get Ogawa in, but he had visa problems.
And he's a prick.
Well,
if you saw that last match he had at the Fukuoka Dome.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, then after Ogawa, I might have the order wrong, but Rapata, then Sabu, and then Rapata again. We tried to get Rapata in, but this guy's dumb as a stick. I mean, it was really bad, and I'm pretty bitter about the whole thing. I mean, the fact that the guy couldn't even get his act together to get a passport. Couldn't get his act together to pass
That's what killed him for going to. He had a Japanese booking next week, and he didn't get his passport again, and that's why he blew the booking.
The guy's dumb as a stick, and I mean he can't even get his act together to pass a drug test in Washington State. So we end up advertising him. He agrees to come, then he doesn't even have the guts to call me up to cancel. He has to get Burt Prentice to leave me a 12-minute message, followed by one by Bill Behrens, and never spoke with Mike Rapata about his cancellation. And then we pushed heavily to have Carino become champion, and we've brought Carino in. In fact, before the end of this year, we'll probably have 15 bookings with Carino. We have 6 of them lined up for July. So, I mean, in terms of the choice of the champion, Carino is by far the best champion in 2001 for the NWA. And Carino has the pride, he has the organization and the personal drive to do well for the NWA, and it's about time we had a champion that can do well for us.
One thing I will say for Carino is that I think he, what's the word? Mentally understands the role of a world champion, because I think he was a fan as a kid of the NWA title.
Yeah, well,
the idea of what a touring world champion is supposed to do. I think he understands that, whereas some of these other guys, I don't think they
they understood it.
You know what the difference is? Carino loves wrestling. It just kind of points something here. We had him here at the end of March, and his last booking was the day before WrestleMania. In our huge negotiations, we had to make sure that we did not fly him home until April 2nd, so therefore he would not miss any part of WrestleMania. So, I mean, I love that. He's a fan of wrestling.
Great.
But better than that, he's organized, and he's going to do the NWA proud. I hope all the promoters will bring him in.
I'll tell you one thing. When you think like that, I'm really glad that WrestleMania was a hell of a show, because if, like, I had to spend an extra day on the road because I wanted to see a show and it stunk, I'd be like, I could have been home a day earlier.
Oh, yeah, but see, we have a deal with a theater chain up here in Canada where they show the pay-per-views. We wrestle before the pay-per-views, and then we go in. Carino did play-by-play for our show.
Is that the Galaxy or the, what the hell's that
Silver
theater? The one with the big UFO?
No, you guys closed that deal for good. We had to go to a new theater.
That's good.
And
Wasn't my match, I just want everyone to know.
Yeah, no, that was hot. Muddy again. But, yeah, we went to another place, and it does really well. So Carino was doing play-by-play over our PA system, you know, with a couple hundred fans standing around, or not fans, actually moviegoers standing around going, what the hell is this? And Carino ended up selling his wrestling boots that day to some fan for like $250. So, well worth the trip.
I want to also mention that former Nitro girl Terry Byrne, who was fire of the Nitro Girls, was on Russian Malloy today. So if you want to hear whatever's going on with Terry Byrne, you can listen on archives to today's Russian Malloy show. Let's go to Mark. Mark, what's going on?
Hi, guys. I'll be real quick. I'll leave my Japanese wrestling question for the board if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
What's the deal with why nobody's trying to go through syndication, like King World syndication? Like, as opposed to trying to get on a network? Because, I mean, in the 80s, that was the only way you saw these territories and stuff.
So when I've talked to promoters about syndication, they all think that it's not viable anymore. Everyone, it's too, because you have to pay for the time. And I mean, the ones who've tried, I mean, if you look at like, Urban and WOW were the two ones that really went the syndication route. And I mean, neither of them lasted very long. Of course,
we didn't get either of them in my area, so.
Yeah. For a lot of indie promoters, I mean, it's a chore enough just running shows. Having to deal with the rigors of television and then the rigors of a syndication deal is very, very difficult. I mean, at ECCW, we'd love to get on television. It's just one extra thing to add to what we already do, and it makes it very, very difficult. That's why I have all the respect in the world for promotions who can actually run a ton of shows and get television.
So do you guys have any tape from ECCW?
I beg your pardon?
Do you guys have tape at all? Like,
absolutely.
You guys selling videos?
We've shot a number of our shows. They're all available for sale on ECCW.com. Check that out. And
quick plug.
We have 6 hours of TV pilots, I guess, that have been looked at by just about every television station in the Pacific Northwest, Canada, parts of Korea, etc. The biggest problem that we're having is, I guess, wrestling companies have burned TV stations in the past. So what they've been asking us for is to put up in almost an escrow or a trust account enough money for 13 or 26 weeks to prove that we can finance our television operations.
See, that's what happens with all these companies that have gone out of business that leave the TV stations, owing the TV stations $100,000.
Yeah, so if anyone has an extra $100,000 in their pocket, ECCW.com, I'll help you spend it.
Okay, I want to check out Dr. Luther. Thank you, guys.
Great.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, we are totally out of time, Dave. I want to thank you very much for doing the show.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Real quick, plug some of your upcoming dates, especially the ones with Carino.
All right. Well, actually, we got an upcoming date tomorrow, which is in North Vancouver, British Columbia, with Carino. It's not until next. Well, actually, let me jump forward. We've got Tommy Dreamer at the end of this month in Vancouver, Washington, Surrey, and in Everett, and then we've got Carino and Sabu for places like Walla Walla, Washington, Vancouver, Washington, and a whole bunch of other places in Canada as well. ECCW.com for all the information.
That's right, and we always have ECCW results up on the Observer.com and the dates as far as like upcoming dates as far as every weekend and things like that. So you can always check the updates on WrestlingObserver.com.
I want to thank you guys for doing that and supporting indie wrestling. There's not enough support, but Wrestling Observer, you guys have just been awesome. So thank you very much. I speak on behalf of all indie wrestlers, of course.
Not all of them.
Well, sorry, the good ones.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we are totally out of time. Thanks a bunch, Dave. Thanks a bunch, Brian. And Al, wherever you are, thank you. And we'll be back tomorrow at 5.